Georgia is doing it again, and this time the move feels almost too calculated to ignore. When American recruiting media says Kingston Brown is getting very familiar with Georgia, that is not throwaway language. That is not just another spring visit. That is the kind of phrase that usually signals a program is not merely recruiting a player, but building an environment around him before the rest of the country fully understands what is happening. According to Yuga Sports, that exact phrase is now attached to Brown. And according to Dawgs HQ on 3, Georgia also made a good impression during his latest visit. In college football recruiting, those two signals together usually mean one thing. The machine in Athens has already started working behind the curtain. And the player at the center of this story is not some random underclassman with a nice highlight tape. Kingston Brown is a defensive line prospect from Carver High School in Columbus, Georgia, part of the 2028 class, and already viewed as one of the most intriguing young defenders in the state. According to 247 Sports, he is listed at 6'3" and 270 pounds, rated as a 4-star prospect with a 0.9208 composite rating, ranked number 130 nationally and number 15 at his position. Sports Illustrated's Washington coverage has also described him as the Boogeyman, a nickname that tells you exactly how evaluators see his upside and presence. This is the kind of frame, power, and early reputation that gets major staffs moving fast. That is why Georgia's interest matters so much here. The Bulldogs are not stepping in late. They are acting early, and that is one of the biggest tells in elite recruiting. Dawgs HQ reported that Brown continues to be a major target for Georgia early in the process. Yuga Sports had already reported back in October that Georgia was in the mix for him after a game day visit, and now that relationship appears to be intensifying. This is how Georgia likes to work, when it identifies a potentially program-shaping defensive prospect from inside the state. The first phase is attention. The second phase is access. The third phase is familiarity. By the time the national battle becomes obvious, the emotional groundwork is often already in place. And make no mistake, this is already becoming a real battle. According to 247 Sports timeline and offer profile, Brown has drawn offers from Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, LSU, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Washington, and others. Sports Illustrated's Washington reporting also listed programs like Miami, Oregon, South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Florida among the schools in the picture. Kentucky coverage from 247 Sports has even noted that after Tennessee, Kentucky is also one of the schools in the mix for Brown. So this is not Georgia recruiting in a vacuum. This is Georgia trying to separate itself from an increasingly crowded field of SEC and national brands that all see the same thing: a young defensive line prospect with uncommon long-term value. That is what makes the phrase, "getting very familiar with Georgia," so powerful. In recruiting language, familiarity is not accidental. It means repeated exposure to the campus, the coaches, the player development pitch, the culture, the city, the routine, the faces, the standard. It means a kid starts imagining himself there without needing to force the picture. And when that happens with an in-state defensive lineman, it becomes especially dangerous for everybody else. Georgia does not need to win the whole race today. It just needs to become normal to him. It needs Athens to stop feeling like a visit and start feeling like a future. That is how programs close on elite defenders before the final drama even begins. Now here is where the 200 million idea starts to make sense. And no, not because Kingston Brown has some absurd personal price tag attached to him right now. The real story is bigger than that. Georgia is recruiting him inside one of the most heavily funded power ecosystems in college football. ESPN famously described Georgia's rise as a $200 million quest, pointing to $174 million in facility upgrades, top-level recruiting investment, and massive coaching spending. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported in 2024 that Georgia was currently spending about $200 million on facilities. And Dog Nation reported in September 2025 that Georgia approved another $56 million football complex expansion project. Brown is not being recruited by a logo. He is being recruited by an empire. That empire is visible in concrete, steel, and square footage. According to official University of Georgia reporting, the most recent Butts-Mare expansion cost $80 million and added 165,000 square feet of new and improved space, including a much larger weight room, sports medicine facility, locker room, and player lounge. That matters in this story because elite defensive linemen are not just choosing schemes anymore. They are choosing development environments, recovery environments, daily quality of life environments. Georgia's recruiting pitch is no longer just come win. It is come live, train, recover, and build your future inside one of the most advanced infrastructures in the sport. When a prospect keeps coming back, that message is doing exactly what it was built to do, and the money behind the machine is not theoretical. Dog Nation reported this week that Georgia generated $241, $8 million in revenue in the 2023-24 fiscal year, with $194.3 million in operating expenses and a roughly $47.5 million surplus. Flagpole also reported those same revenue and expense figures in its review of the business side of Georgia athletics. Those numbers tell you why Georgia can play the long game in recruiting. This is not a desperate program chasing one headline commitment. This is a financially powerful operation that can stack facilities, staff, recruiting resources, and development infrastructure in ways most programs simply cannot sustain. When a young defender sees that repeatedly, familiarity turns into trust, and trust often turns into momentum. There is also the development side of the sell, and that might be the most intimidating piece for Georgia's rivals. ESPN noted in 2025 that Georgia had produced 20 first-round NFL draft picks under Kirby Smart. Saturday Down South reported after the 2025 NFL Draft that Georgia has produced 17 first-rounders since Smart took over in 2016, including former #1 overall pick Travon Walker. And Georgia's defensive identity remains central to the brand. For a young defensive lineman, that is the real dream being marketed. Not just Saturdays in Athens, but Sundays in the NFL. Georgia can walk Brown through the building and say, with evidence, that this path has already worked for a long list of elite defenders. That is why this does not feel like a casual recruitment anymore. This feels like Georgia applying one of its most dangerous formulas. Identify the in-state trench prospect early, establish comfort before the market reaches full frenzy, and let the infrastructure do the convincing over time. According to 247 Sports, Brown already took a junior day visit to Washington in March and has stacked offers quickly across the country. That tells you his profile is only going to rise from here. If Georgia can lock in emotional positioning before Brown's recruitment reaches another level nationally, then the Bulldogs are not just competing. They are shaping the battlefield before everybody else arrives with their best pitch. And there is another layer to this that fans should not overlook. Georgia has every incentive to keep the best defensive line talent home. Dog Nation reported last year that 13 of Georgia's 22 commitments in the 2026 cycle came from inside the state. That pattern matters because it shows Kirby Smart still treats the state border like strategic territory. If there is a disruptive defensive lineman from Columbus with national offers and major upside, Georgia does not want to merely recruit him. Georgia wants to absorb him into the home state identity of the program before Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, A&M, or anyone else can make him feel like he belongs somewhere else. That is not just recruiting. That is territorial control. So when people hear UGA and the secret move for the $200 million DL, the smart way to understand it is this. The number is not a literal market value on Kingston Brown today. The number represents the size of the force Georgia can bring to bear in a recruitment like this. It represents the facilities, the resources, the revenue, the recruiting manpower, the development track record, and the long horizon planning that let Georgia turn early interest into lasting advantage. Brown is the prospect. The $200 million part is the ecosystem surrounding the pursuit. And if Brown truly is getting very familiar with Georgia, then the Bulldogs may already be laying the foundation for the next elite pillar in the trenches, because that is the real discovery in this story. Georgia's secret move is not some dramatic last-second flip attempt. It is something colder, smarter, and harder to beat. It is strategic repetition. It is making a young blue-chip defensive lineman feel seen early, valued early, wanted early, and comfortable early. It is making Athens feel inevitable before the final decision window even opens. And in modern college football, where roster building is part evaluation, part psychology, and part industrial-scale investment, that may be the most powerful move of all. So now I want to hear from you. Is this familiarization strategy the new gold standard in recruiting? Or is Georgia taking a calculated risk by going all in this early on a 2028 defensive lineman?